Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nichman.
Our guest today is Doc Greene, the quintessential music man, conservative activist, and thought leader on issues facing America and the state of Texas. You can check out Doc Greene's very popular radio show on American Voice Radio Network or RagingElephantRadio.com. You can also find him on YouTube at The Amazing Doc Greene Show.
I'm happy to be with you today, Christina.
You betcha. It's wonderful having you back as a return guest. Today is our focus is Doc Greene. So the man, the music, the life, Doc Greene. You've been in the U.S. Air Force. And I wanted to bring you on because you are an activist fighting for the freedom of the people. And, you know, a lot of people, that's misconstrued sometimes. And I myself thought I was fighting for the freedom of the United States in my early 20s as a Democrat, and then realized that the party I thought was fighting for the rights of people actually weren't. You know, both parties have had their problems and a lot of times not always been fighting for the rights of the people. But now I've started to wake myself up, educate, continuing journey of education. For you, share with the audience your journey to politics. Have you always been awake, or did you start to realize, hey, there's more that I can learn here? The government isn't always working on behalf of the people.
Well, of course, growing up on a ranch in Wyoming, all of my people were Democrats. And when I was old enough to vote in my first election, of course, I voted for smiling Jimmy Carter. I mean, how could you not like a man with a smile like that?
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, is my hair okay?
It's perfect.
So anyway, I voted for Jimmy Carter. And about that point in time, I was getting out of the Air Force. And I had started my own band, and we were touring. And I noticed that on Sundays, we were starting to have problems finding gasoline. I actually had to carry a jerry can in the back of my van because I was very concerned that on our trip, say, between Texas and Indiana, I might not be able to find any gas at all, and we would be stranded somewhere and miss our next date. Mm-hmm. So this is what I got for voting for Jimmy Carter. Prices were out of control. Interest rates were, even for a home loan, were like 18, 19%. It was nuts. And I said, okay, I voted for the Democrat. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the awakening. But I got to admit, even after that, I was still very much asleep, I would say, until somewhere during Bush 43, I think, when I realized that, wow, this guy's not really doing any better than Bill Clinton was. Mm-hmm. And it was about that point in time, Christina, I started doing some research, and I realized that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party were two wings of the same bird that was going to the same place. I don't know if you're familiar with the term globalism, and you can stop me if I get too far off the beam at any time. Okay?
Yeah.
But I realized these guys were all on the same team. They were all working for the same one world government. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, Christina, but I really like being an American. I think that there are a lot of things that we do well in America, some things we do less well. But I like being an American, and I think America's got a lot to offer the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And so I don't really want to be part of a one world globalist government. And I remember being on a TV show called Tommy's Garage. You can still find it on YouTube. Uh-huh. And every week during the primary election, when Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders were on the Democrat side, and we had, 17 or 18 people on the Republican side, every week they would come to me on this little round table. It was a comedy show with a, political panel. And they'd say, well, Doc, who's going to win? And I said, well, I'm kind of leaning toward Ted Cruz, but if this Donald Trump guy gets in this thing, he wins it. And
really, you really thought that was the case at that time?
Even before he announced, I said, if Donald Trump gets in this, he wins it. And everybody would laugh at me, and they go to the next person. Uh-huh. And all throughout the rest of that year, I was on that show for a full year every week. They would always come to me, well, Doc, who's going to win the election? And every week I would say Donald Trump. And they would all laugh at me, and they would go on. And these are politically savvy people on this panel, by the way. So it's not like they had no clue. But at the end of the election cycle, well, guess who won? It was Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how everybody feels about that. I've looked at the polls right now. Donald Trump's polls are the highest of any president at this point since they've been taking polls. But Donald Trump has been very impressive to me. Mm-hmm. Now, as a relatively conservative guy, somebody would say, well, Donald Trump's not a conservative. And they're absolutely right. Donald Trump is not a conservative. Mm-hmm. It's just that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have moved so far to the left that it makes him look conservative.
I know, it's scary, eh?
So, this is where we are. Christina, I mean, you do biz radio. That's what you like to talk about. But still, you've got to admit that if you're a business person right now, it's looking pretty good.
It's definitely looking better for all my business peeps, I've noticed. And it doesn't have to be a huge corporation. People have the misconceptions that this just benefits huge corporations. And I've seen the tax cuts even for, my size business, as well as just being an average citizen. All of my friends have gotten more back and less taxes taken out of their paycheck, which is a huge benefit. And as one guy said to me, he's my physical trainer at the gym, he said, well, why should the rich get any tax cuts? I'm like, dude, if we make it a tax cut where it's like everyone gets down the line percentage-wise, I think that's fair. Because if you're making millions and you pay the same percentage I'm paying, that's fair. They shouldn't get 70% out while we get, 10% out. Honestly, I don't know if you've heard of the fairtax.org. I really like their. I
live at fairtax.org.
Oh my God, it's awesome idea. We had them on our show, and I was just totally rocking about the idea here that everyone would be paying really their fair share. It would be, it would be sales tax, maybe 10%, whatever it is. But it doesn't matter how rich you are. You buy a boat, your butt's getting taxed the same as me buying my milk. And of course, I'm going to buy a heck of a lot less than someone who has millions of dollars, but hey, it would make the playing field a lot more fair. So
that's what makes it fair. It's self-adjusting. Mm-hmm. If you're a poor, low-income person, you don't buy very much, you pay almost no tax. And of course, as you know, into the fair tax, they have built in a floor where you're going to get a rebate at the end of the year for your taxes if you're below that level. Mm-hmm. But if you're Donald Trump and you go out and you buy a new airplane or you go out and buy a new yacht, you're going to pay that tax, and it's going to be huge, and everybody should be smiling and happy and applauding for you because you just funded half the government for the month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, I can see the things that would really make this tax hard to go through the Senate and the House because they're like, hey, we kind of like our gravy train here and we'd like to not be taxed. And that's one thing people don't realize. They say, oh, here's this big mogul, this real estate mogul running. Well, he's just a rich guy. I don't know if you've not looked at most of the people in the Congress and the Senate, but they're rich people too. And how the heck did they get rich being public servants? That boggles my mind that you're a public servant, but you're rich.
Well, somebody, and I wish I could remember his name, but he said it is impossible to get rich as a politician if you're honest.
Mm. Yes.
And I have to agree with that. It has always amazed me, Christina, how do these people go in as relative paupers, fairly, low income guys, and 7, 8, 10 years later, they're multimillionaires. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how does that happen?
Yeah.
So I don't know, unless something is not right. I mean, I asked the same question, by the way. I talked to an FBI agent friend of mine this week, and I said, how did James Comey end up with $40 million exactly as a public servant? So this is before he wrote his book, so it didn't come from the book sales.
Yeah. It's a question. Yeah, it's a question that we need to ask because what I'd like to see is a government really for the people, by the people, back again. And I don't care what team you want to call yourself from because honestly, for a long, long time, I consider myself part of the Democratic team. And now I'm like, enough with the team, enough with the, putting yourself in the Republican team or Democrat team or Green team. We really need to say, are the people who we're voting in really reflecting the will of the people and our values and really speaking on our behalf?
Well, Christina, you just nailed it. You said government of the people, by the people, for the people. Well, what does that require? It requires the people. And, in an average election, we have what, 17, 18, 19% turnout in an average election? They've done excellent job in the public school system and on TV, convincing people that their vote really doesn't make a difference. And it is back to the old Cicero, bread and circuses. As long as there's plenty of bread and circuses, the people really don't pay attention. It doesn't matter that here, as you and I are speaking, the bread maybe doesn't taste quite as good. It doesn't really matter that the quality of the circus is not nearly what it once was, but it's still bread and it's still a circus, and I still have enough of each to make my life okay. And that's where we are living today. And the reason why I mentioned at one other point in time the globalism issue, if people could look and see what the globalists really believe and what they really want, they believe that you, Christina, would do just fine with 100 square feet of a flat apartment, cement walls, no art on the walls, by the way, because that is superfluous. You don't need that. And and basic nutrition twice a day. What else does anyone really need?
Now,
and they honestly believe that.
What exactly, explain for people, like, are the globalists the EU? Is it just super rich people that are beyond like super rich, that they own countries? What exactly is it?
Well, the super rich thing, we always see that list of the 10 richest people in the world. Let me assure you, the 10 richest people in the world don't appear on any list. Most people don't even know what their names are. But basically, you've heard of the Bilderbergers, you've heard of the Rothschilds. It's all part of that. And these are the people that they consider themselves citizens of the world, citizens of the universe, if you will. And they look on people like Christina and Doc Greene as merely their minions, their servants. And they look at what we have and they say, that's really more than he needs. And they want to strip it down to that basic. Do you realize these people actually believe that the world population should be 25 million people?
That's crazy.
The world population. Now, let me help put that in perspective. There are 27 million people living in Texas legally, and another 12 million that are here illegally, just in the state of Texas. So they want to reduce the world population to 25 million people so that Mother Earth can recover from the scourge of man.
So this brings me to something you've heard people debating on both sides, global climate change and stuff. Do you feel that that's being used as a means to make people think, okay, here's a big problem and we have the solution, which is let's get rid of people?
Well, they're definitely using that climate change to push this. And of course, Christina, you and I probably both know that climate change is a very real thing. But whenever anybody wants to talk to me about climate change, the first question I always have to ask is, once upon a time, the earth was hot and humid. We had a very high oxygen atmosphere and dinosaurs ruled the earth. And then came the Ice Age. What caused the Ice Age? Did the dinosaurs industrialize?
That would be interesting.
Did they build too many factories? And then if I ever get an answer to that question, and no one has ever cared to debate me after that, they just call me a racist and walk away. Then if
dinosaur racist, how dare you?
I'm going to say, well, the Ice Age ended. Woolly mammoths died. What caused the end of the Ice Age? What caused that global warming? Did the woolly mammoths build too many automobiles? Did they use too much electricity? You see, climate change is absolutely real. The way it's being portrayed as man-made is an absolute lie.
Okay.
Does that make any sense? You're a college-educated woman, Christina. Does that make any sense to you?
No, it doesn't make any sense. But also, I do think we have to have responsibility of our own actions, but putting in charge EU or global government to say, here's what you should be using, and we're going to tax you. I always say to people, if you care about the environment, stop talking about it and having the government do stuff for you or making policies. You decide not to live beyond your means. And if you live more within your means and then you're not buying all this crap, well, guess what? The businesses who make all that crap will make less of it, and hence the environment will do better. So it's more about individual responsibility instead of looking for some outside source to make you be responsible.
Indeed, you're absolutely right. And by and large, men do think about their environment. And I appreciate clean air and water as much as anyone. I love to walk out and see the sky blue, not smoggy. And I live in the fourth largest city in the United States, Houston, Texas. So the potential is absolutely there. But we blame everything for man. And you've probably noticed there's a huge resurgence now of communism. Up there in your neck of the woods, you've got this Ocasio-Cortez woman that's out there pushing communism. She doesn't know what it really is, but she's pushing it. But if you look at communism and you dissect it, it looks a lot like a religious order, only instead of having a benevolent, all-seeing God at the top of it, you have a man.
An all benevolent, all-seeing, knowing government or entity that rules over you. And I don't think people realize that the idea of giving your power over to this entity, which you think will do a better job of keeping men in check, is not, because it's men. And they're just going to be just as corrupt. Was it absolute power corrupt absolute?
Yes, that men have always had. The movie Lord of the Rings, the intro to that movie. Did you see that movie? I'm sure you did.
No, I did not, actually.
Peter Jackson? Well, I read the books as a child, and of course the books, and then I reread them as a teenager, and then I reread them as an adult because they are really that good.
Really?
But in the movie, the very first movie, Lord of the Rings, maybe it was Fellowship of the Rings, they have an opening, and it talks about the different beings that lived in Middle-earth, and then finally it gets to men. And it said that what men wanted above all things was power. And that's what delineated them from the other inhabitants of Middle-earth. These other people, the dwarves love gold. They wanted gold. That's what they wanted more than anything. But men wanted power.
Yeah.
And that was written by J.R. Tolkien, of course, back in the 40s. And he wrote it based a lot on his experiences in World War I. It's an incredible look, though, at who we truly are. And there's a lot of biblical allegory in there. But that's what men want more than anything, is they want power, they want recognition, they want fame.
It's true. I mean,
that's what drives the whole deal.
Really, when you look at people getting excited about their favorite celebrity, it's that idea, that pinnacle look, and I'm a celebrity, everyone will love me, I'll have everything at my fingertips. And the sad thing is people can construe the idea of money itself as being evil and the rich people being evil, when money in itself, we know, running a business, is just a tool to make things move in exchange of value and services. But really, what's really evil is that idea of power over another. And I see this in many different ways, from walking into a corporate office, because I deal with accounts receivable and I help businesses discover how to run their accounts receivables more effectively. I'll see, even with the power trip of executives over their little minions, aka employees, that it's this power over another is what's so corruptible.
That is the problem, and there's no way to solve that. Hate to get all religious on you, but a favorite pastor of mine once said, there's nothing in the world that's more dangerous than a man without God.
Yeah.
And his point is simply that when a man has God, he understands there's a payday someday, and there are limits to what I can do as a man. And even though I may want to go do that thing, I realize it's going to have bad results, and so I'm not going to do it because I'm going to have to answer to a God one day. But now you take that same man, you take away the God equation from that. What limits does he have unless they're self-imposed? And knowing the nature of men, what limits is he likely to impose upon himself?
Freedom, against taking people's freedom. And it's interesting because right now people are loving the idea of tyranny and communism. They're thinking of socialism as we all just give to one another. It's all like, hippie, yay, whatever. But without realizing, you're telling someone else to take the goods of all of our labor and be the one to disperse it to others. And you're just making the general assumption that they're going to equally disperse it in a nice way where we all have enough. And like I've said,
equality, right? Has that become the holy grail of the New World movement now? Everyone should be equal.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing equal signs on cars.
Yeah.
Everyone should be equal. Well, can we make everyone equal on a Donald Trump level? Can we give everyone 2 Trump towers and a Trump plane and a Trump boat? Because if we could do that, I'd go for it. But you know that we can't do that, can we? Because as Margaret Thatcher so famously said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money.
Well, exactly. And here's the problem. If we're getting to a point where everything's equal and I don't have to try because no matter how much effort I put in, I'm just going to be paid the same as my neighbor. And even if, let's say, that sameness is $40,000 for every single American, well, we're all going to walk into work and be like, well, why bust my butt? I already got $40,000 insured. Why even bust it? At that point, productivity goes down into the toilet. Everything starts sucking. Now we can't even insure $40,000 a person. Now what? Now we're going to be mad that the government's not giving us what was insured, but it can't unless we're all producing.
Well, you know that Canadian city just recently set up that income equality thing where they wanted to have everyone to have a basic income.
Yeah.
It lasted 90 days, Christina.
Wow.
In 90 days, the account was completely empty. They could not refill it. They had to cut it off. And now what have you done? Now you've got a bunch of people that are used to getting a check every month, and they're not getting it anymore, and they're not happy.
Yeah, exactly. No, so where do you see the fix here? I mean, because I'm seeing a lot, and this is the reason we started this segment, Heartbeat of the World. It's to really get people thinking, talking, instead of hollering at each other saying, no, I'm right, no, you're wrong, no, right. That doesn't help anything. Where do we go to where we're not fragmented and we're seeing, because we all do want to, live our life to the best and fullest of our abilities. And, pursuit of happiness, that's why everyone wants to come to the United States of America. So how do we get back to that true value?
Well, you have to restore what I call constitutional values. And this, Christina, is where a lot of people miss it because they've been taught about how horrible our founding fathers were in school.
Yeah.
But I honestly look at these guys and I say, these guys were geniuses. They came up with the right idea. The pursuit of happiness, what does that actually mean? Well, at the time that they wrote that, the idea of the pursuit of happiness was that you would be a landowner. Mm-hmm. They thought that private property rights more or less were the bedrock of the pursuit of happiness. And we have utterly destroyed that in America. Mm-hmm. The idea of property taxes, for instance, a completely communistic idea where the state owns everything and you, the people, own nothing. Mm-hmm. Here in Texas, this great liberty state, home of the Alamo. Here in Texas, I don't care who you are and how much you spend on your house, you will never own it. You will pay taxes, you'll pay rent to the government for your entire natural life. And Christina, should anything ever happen to you, like that incredibly handsome husband of yours would pass away perhaps and leave you the house that he had built for you so carefully, and then you reach the point where you can't pay those rents to the state anymore that they call property taxes, well, Christina, they'll send men with guns and kick them out of your house.
Yeah. And it's sad that people aren't up in arms about it. I've heard my grandma say the time-old adage, there's only 2 things in life you have to do, die and pay taxes. I'm like, pay taxes? For one, the tax situation only started to charge people taxes, in 1920s. So my grandma was born in 1929, but as far as her working life, she'd been charged taxes. So she was convinced and told by a government entity that you must pay taxes. And there's 2 things you have to do, pay taxes and die. And she passed that on to me when I was a kid. And now I'm thinking, this is interesting, Doc. I was at the Democratic convention. Clinton was in office and I was sitting there at the table with a bunch of other people. And there was this guy rattling off, the IRS is a bad, evil entity. It's against our Constitution and we shouldn't be paying taxes. And and I would just look at him and I'm like, God, she's crazy or something. But now, over years of starting to read about, the IRS, for one, didn't always exist. It only came into existence in 1913 and got put into law after, during Christmas when they, invaded the, the Federal Reserve. when we're all sleeping, going, oh, look, we're just going to, put this into existence when you're all sleeping, opening gifts. 1913. No one ever thought, hey, wait a second, this is against the people. This is the whole reason we created this country, to not have a centralized system of money over us, to have the government running everything. And, it's kind of like people just kind of fell asleep behind the wheel.
Well, this is exactly what happened. And a lot of people right now are up in arms because they say, well, Donald Trump, this tariff thing is ruining everything. Mm-hmm. But Christina, you said it yourself. And once again, for the younger listeners out there, we did not have an income tax until the early 1900s. This entire country was financed on tariffs. Mm-hmm. And we charged other countries for the privilege to come into America and sell us their goods and services. Mm-hmm. And it worked really well. But they put in the progressive income tax, this globalist thing I was telling you about, this Bilderberger thing. Mm-hmm. These guys were around before the United States was even a country. They used to run Europe. And it scared the hell out of them that they were not going to be able to run America. And so they started immediately working on this. And the creature from Jekyll Island that we now call the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor do they have a reserve. They've never been audited. It's a privately owned bank. Mm-hmm. Was all brought in so that they could come up with some way to control these free-spirited Americans that just seemed to think they could do whatever they wanted.
Yeah, and there's a wonderful book on it. Do you remember the name of that book, Dr.
Well,
Jekyll?
The Creature from Jekyll Island was one of them.
Yes, that's one of them.
The other book that is, give me a second, then we'll come. None dare call it Conspiracy. Fabulous book that everyone should read. And more recent, the other books on it, they don't delve into the depths of it, but they did try to forewarn us. A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, 1984, An Animal Farm by George Orwell. These are all on the Doc Greene required reading list.
Yeah. And go.
Things you need to know. And this is part of your education. This is what they should be teaching you at the university instead of the stuff they're teaching you.
Well, it was interesting. I read 1984, but I hadn't read it since high school. And so I retook out 1984. I read Animal Farm, A Brave New World, which I hadn't read. And just to remember stuff that I'm pretty sure isn't on the reading curriculum today, sadly. But it's just these authors already saw the direction our country was headed and the world. And they wanted to awaken people that, hey, this is not so good where we're headed.
Well, do you remember how 1984 ended? Because I had to read that in high school, and I had forgotten. And so I reread it about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you could have knocked me over with a feather when I got to that last page.
Oh, yeah. I was just totally, I fell. I was like, is this what's going to happen? People are just like, why bother? I'll just give in to the beast. Yeah. Sad.
Well, some people tell me that, and I have even family members say, Doc, why do you bother doing 2 hours a day talking about this stuff? Nobody cares. Fortunately, I do have an audience. Thank you. But nonetheless, I do it because my grandchildren don't know. They didn't get a vote. And I've got 10 of them. And they deserve to at least have some sort of world when they get here, and then they can take it over and do what they will with it. So that's why I fight. It's for my grandchildren.
Yeah. And, this is bigger than any political party you or team you want to say you belong to. We've really got to start really discovering, like I tell anyone who listens to my show and any guests that come on, just before we had Lata Note from the First Amendment Center talking about the First Amendment. Really, it's not what anyone says here. It's about discovering and educating yourself. Don't take one news channel, one news source, one thing you read and say, this is it. I get it. I know everything I need to know. Because in my 20s, I thought I knew everything I need to know. I thought I was fighting on behalf of the people for the people. And now I realize that, there's so much I'm still learning. So really just not to cut off, to keep learning, pick up these books, pick up other books, but just don't stop there. Don't take what one person says, one entity, and just keep educating yourself, because it starts with educating, and then it starts with listening to each other instead of cutting down what the other person says because it's uncomfortable. I don't agree with you.
Well, we're so much on the same page. You're up in the Northeast. I'm down in South Texas. And by the way, I'm having microphone envy because you have a blue bottle mic, and I covet those. For those of you that are not technical, a blue bottle mic is like amazing. But anyway, we believe a lot of the same things because we've come to realize that our founding fathers were pretty much geniuses, and they had a great idea to create a platform that doesn't benefit one party or another. Indeed, they hated the idea of a party system. They simply wanted to create a country where anyone that cared enough to want to make something of themselves could do so.
Yeah.
And what we have today with the government involved in the welfare system and things like that, this was not part of their plan. The welfare system was always supposed to be the province of the church. Not that the church is perfect. It has its problems because it's got people in it. And anytime you have something with people in it, there are going to be problems. But certainly the church has a more overall altruistic motive in wanting to help people than the government does. But somehow these globalists, of which I've spoken, got involved in our country early on and convinced the Christian people that the government could handle these charitable issues so much better than the church. So just give your money to the government and trust them. And now, where are we now, Christina?
Not too pretty what I'm seeing, the strife and anger and push. And honestly, I think part of the strife between citizen against citizen is really created strife so that we are not paying attention to what's really important in front of us and then just fighting amongst ourselves. I think that it's purely by design. I don't think it's an accident. And that's why I really call upon every citizen, regardless of where you feel, what party, belief, or what you think you believe. Like I said earlier to a guest I had on today, a lot of what I thought I believed even before I got started to really, continuing to educate myself, really weren't even my beliefs. They were passed on to me from school or college or my society or job. And, when you start to peel back the onion and say, what are my true values? Is what's being done in the government or out there really reflecting my true values?
Well, it's funny the way that you're bringing that up because something very interesting along this line happened to me about 2 weeks ago. There's a guy named Jarvis Johnson. He's a state rep here in Texas. He's a black Democrat, and he has his own radio show, and he wanted to bring on a Trump supporter because he had never spoken to a Trump supporter, and he just wondered, how screwed up is our mind? What are we thinking? And he scheduled me for a 10-minute slot on his show. And I know that he was thinking, this Trump supporter, I'm going to bring him in here and I'm going to expose him for the white racist that he is. And we'll be done with this guy in 9 minutes instead of 10. We ended up doing a full 45 minutes, and he completely aced all of the commercials and everything. His producer kept coming in, pointing at the watch. But we had a dialogue, and I ended up having him on my show, and I'm going to have him back again because he was amazed to find out that not all Trump supporters are racist and that we're not all nuts and that we have some common ground between black people and white people. And and he said it himself. He said, this is what needs to happen. There has to be a dialogue. We need to quit yelling at each other and just start talking to each other.
Exactly.
Christina, that's what you do so well on your show is you like to bring these viewpoints together and let people have some insight.
Exactly. Because we're not all going to agree. We all come from different experiences, but the only way we can come to common ground and really build a future for our kids and our grandkids is to really stop the strife amongst ourselves and come together with our common core values, which, that's why everyone in the world wants to come here, to build a better life, to the pursuit of happiness. Let's get back to allowing everyone to build their own destiny without deciding that I'm going to choose what I think your destiny should be because this is the right stuff, this is the right picture, and this picture doesn't match.
Well, if communism is such a great idea, why does everyone want to come to the United States, Christina?
Instead of North Korea.
That's it. So maybe it's not a good idea. So why do we want it here?
Well, I've talked
to Miss Cortez. I'd like to buy her a ticket and send her to Argentina for a month. I just want to drop her off on the street. And we'll come back and get her. We're not going to abandon her, but I want to leave her there for a month, and I want to see what she thinks when she comes back in 30 days after living in Argentina.
Well, here's the thing I've gotten. We've had a confirmed communist on the show, and talking about his viewpoint, and really he was basically like Karl Marx
Yeah,
had it
Karl
perfect.
Marx, yeah.
Karl Marx had it perfect. The only problem is that man and corruptible man and government has gotten in the way. But one day when the people get socialism and communism, we're going to make it perfect, because we're not going to have that evil government entity, and we're going to really share things. It's going to be utopian. It's going to be perfect. And again, like we just talked about, with corruptible man at charge of anything.
Believe that?
I think they do. And he said, we just haven't had enough time to get it right, but it will be right. As long as we make it a democratic, what did Bernie call it? Socialist democracy?
The democratic socialist.
That's it. And I'm like, I don't know, because no matter what it is, whatever government entity, even capitalism, when you put it in the corruptible hands of corruptible men, that's the problem, is men. So or women, you know what I'm saying, but humans.
Well, I know exactly what you mean. When I use the term man, I include the fairer sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way it always used to be. And thank God for women.
Oh.
I'm grateful. And quite frankly, the only reason I can do the stuff I do is because I have a fabulous wife that's put up with my stuff for 47 years.
Oh, God bless JoAnne. Yay.
So men or women, it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe that guy had not really sat down to spend some time thinking about how that communist system works. If we just put the people in charge, but you can't do that. You see, you can't. I mean, why do we have a Congress with 500 people in it? Because we can't bring all 328 million people together and have a meeting. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not only that, we all have different ideas of what's right. So to say we'll just all figure it out, kumbaya together, there's so many different frames and perspectives on what my great life will look like. Like, look at Donald Trump loves to live large. His idea of, living in a big palace in Manhattan, that's not my idea. I love the ocean and a little cottage. My vision of a great life looks different than his vision. It's not wrong. It's different.
It's different, and you should be able to do that. But I got to tell you, I for many years ran a home theater company where we did luxury home theaters for really rich people. And one of the things I noticed about the really rich, well, a couple of things. First of all, almost everybody I worked for that was really rich got that way because they worked their butts off. Mm-hmm. And some of them now in their 70s and 80s still work a 60-hour week.
Wow.
That's what most people don't know about the rich. The second thing that I noticed is they were never alone, Christina. Every time I showed up at the house, you got the groundskeeper, you got the pool guy, you got the nanny, you got the cook, you got the maid. They're there all the time, and multiple other people like myself just popping in and doing what we do and leaving, frequently meeting only with the house manager, not even talking to the homeowner. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, that would not make me happy, but that's kind of Donald Trump's world. Mm-hmm. I want to be alone in my house with my wife from time to time without wondering who's going to be coming in to do whatever else needed to be done. Mm-hmm. So I think we're probably on the same page in that respect. Mm-hmm. But once again, glad Donald Trump can have that.
Yeah.
But I want to get down to, this whole idea of man rule and as I mentioned, communism looks a lot like a religious system without a God. It really comes down to this. If there is no God, Christina, then my rules are no better than your rules. Mm-hmm. And every man will do what's right in his own eyes, and the end result of that is chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I prefer the idea that there is a God and that there are some rules and that there are some things, even if I have in my hand the money and the power to do certain things, I don't do them because I know there is a payday someday.
Yeah.
And so that's what you got to look at. Is there a God? Because if there is a God, there are rules. Mm-hmm. And if there is no God, then all things are possible. And who's to say you can't do what you want to do?
Yeah.
Even if it means you're going to destroy someone else in the process of enjoying yourself.
It's crazy to me. And it's only recently that we've started to push God out of this country completely. And it's funny for the people who are complete atheists. They get so riled up like, oh, well, they just want to shut down the idea of God. I'm like, well, listen, if God does not exist in your universe, if he's not real, then why should it bother you for someone to believe in God? And why should it bother you that they decide to live by a code? a code of morality, a code of goodness. It shouldn't bother you. But it's kind of become now, and you've heard this even in the Bible, the idea that good or kind of perverted evil or darkness has now become the norm. And it's like, woohoo, that's not here. It's kind of like the first year in college, you go drinking and crazy. Your mom's not around, dad's not around.
My eldest granddaughter's in college now, and I was thinking about her this morning and wondering what life lessons she's learning.
Whoa.
A little fearfully, I might add.
No, a lot of prayer.
You talk about getting rid of religion. There was a billboard in California about a church. They're getting ready to have some services, and the guy's holding up a black book. It resembles a Bible. There's nothing on the book that says it's a Bible. It's just a black book. They made him take the billboards down because they said, you're promoting religion on the public streets, and we can't allow that.
Yeah.
Well, because of the Bible. You put the billboard up, but you can't have the Bible in there. Now, once again, it doesn't say Bible anywhere on it. Doesn't say Quran, doesn't say anything. But it's just the very idea. This is where we are now in a lot of places where everyone is so anti-Christ. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, that they won't even allow a picture of a book that looks like it might be a Bible, Christina.
Well, here's the thing I would really search and ask people to go deep into their heart and soul for. Whether you say you believe in Jesus or God yourself, I really truly believe we're now at a spiritual war with each other. And people are thinking it's all this outside tension and strife that has to do with Donald or has to do with the news. And really, it's way beyond that. It really, really is. It's at a soul level. And I think that's why when you talk to people and they don't have a strong foundation, why they just get stir crazy and want to shut you down and in some cases want to kill you because they're standing on sand, their foundation's crumbling and they don't know why everything's rocking. But this is the time to really say, okay, what are my values? And if I have none, where do I start? Because right now, if your world is crumbling, why is it crumbling?
Well, everyone has values, and you've got to determine where your values come from. And if you want to be an atheist and not believe in God, I'm completely with you. But like you mentioned earlier, if you're an atheist and you don't believe there's a God, why do you care that I do?
Yeah.
It's not hurting you. I'm not making you believe. I'm not saying if you're not in my church on Sunday, I'm sending the cops to get you. So what's the problem?
What I'm seeing lately, and this is a little scary. I mean, with what happened with Alex Jones, I know people are like, well, that's just, Alex Jones, and he's really far right. He's not far right. But what I'm seeing is that, like what you said with that billboard and the black book, which didn't even have the Bible in it, is that they're taking anything that is not perverted, crazy, dark, and woohoo, we can do whatever we want. And the government's allowing us. Like the government allowed you before to do it. But now they're sanctioning it. It's all awesome to, do whatever. But that anything with goodness in Christ will be shut down and eventually become illegal and hate speech. And that is scary to me.
Well, it is. And what they did to Alex Jones, once again, I think is just going to make him bigger. The fact that they're trying to censor him because, well, we all know that Facebook is a huge platform. YouTube is a huge platform. Google. Oh, and by the way, I got banned on a Facebook page this week because I was, let me see, how did they put it? For deprecating gender. I don't know what that even means. So I don't know what to do with it. Then I got another warning this week from Google. It said I'd violated their standards with some message. But they don't tell me what message. They don't tell me what I did that specifically violated their standards. This is cyberbullying, Christina, where you have these nameless, faceless people that send you an email from a do not reply address and give you some sort of nebulous warning that you could not possibly comply with because you don't know what you did. So how am I going to fix the problem if you don't even tell me what the problem is? You could have said, well, on your show on Tuesday at 12:05 p.m. CST, you said, or you ran this video and that violated our standards because, but which, by the way, going back to the Constitution, that was the Fourth Amendment. They had to say, okay, if we're going to come and arrest somebody, and that's what they're trying to do electronically, is arrest me, you have to have a warrant. It's got to say, so-and-so, and put your name in there, did this, the crime you're being committed of, and we believe this is the evidence and it can be found here. That was the whole idea of the Fourth Amendment. But these communists that want to get rid of our current Constitution and create their own utopia, they want to get rid of all of those Fourth Amendment protections so that you could just come up and say, hey, you violated our policy. And never tell you how or why, just get rid of you. And that's what they've done to Alex Jones, Christina, which worries me, because if they could do it to Alex Jones, they could do it to me, they could do it to you.
Yeah, anyone. And, I was talking about this earlier with the other guests, but I had a friend who was upset about, there was a movie out a couple years ago that talked about comedians and how comedians are being stopped to say, well, their jokes, certain jokes are not acceptable. And my friend was like, yeah, there's a lot of inflammatory jokes against God, blasphemous jokes. I think they should all be banned. I said, no, I get that, because I don't like people being blasphemous against the Lord either. I would personally walk out of a show that did that. But if you start banning people from saying negative stuff about God, then where does it draw the line? Because then tomorrow it'll be the speech that you say will be banned, because it'll be like, well, that's not acceptable. So who gets to be drawing the line of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable? And basically what I'm seeing now is that if you're not staying in the narrative that's been, drawn upon by the people who are running the world, if you're not staying in that box, then you're deemed as hate speech, fear speech, whatever. We need to stop you.
Well, when I joined the Air Force during the Vietnam conflict, it wasn't officially a war. What was I fighting for? I was fighting to stop the spread of those who would eliminate your right to freedom of speech. And so George Carlin, who's a terrifically funny guy, but he said some perfectly horrible things. Nonetheless, I would fight for his right to be able to say those things. And once again, like you, if you offend me that much, I'll probably just get up and walk out. But I'm not going to say that you should be banned from ever being heard by anyone because I don't like your point of view. I believe that, well, what I like to do and what you like to do is we like to bring people on that we disagree with and have an honest discussion with them and try to understand where they're coming from and let our values rub together, as it were, Christina, because that's really the way you solve a lot of problems, is just doing that. But these people would actually shut down anyone that doesn't agree with them. And most of the people that are out there, like the Antifa guys and stuff like that are fighting and going nuts, they don't understand that if they get the world they pretend they want, they would never be able to do what they're doing, Christina.
See, and this is why I implore people to go deeper, because really what you think you want, to shut down is really a fear, because you are standing on sand. You're rocking and rolling, things are uncomfortable, and it's not Donald, it's not the news, it's not conservative, it's your soul speaking to you. You need to go deeper. You need to stop listening to, why am I feeling on rocky ground? Let me try going to that church service. Maybe it'll rock me the right way. Maybe not. But, if there's a reason you're uncomfortable, because I've seen some of the nuance, bro, and some of the people going out there talking, journalists are willing to go to these protests and say, why do you think the way you think? Why are you here today? And they're not putting forth their narrative at all, whatever their belief system. I don't even know where nuance bro comes from, but it's basically just being a real journalist today, basically just saying, why are you here? What does this mean to you? And that alone sends Antifa or people who are super, left view into like the stratosphere of, they want to attack. And what are you here for? Are you working for Alex Jones? And no, he's not. He's asking you a valid question that you cannot give an answer to, because really you're standing on sand. What you think you're here for, it's not even your value or belief system, but you haven't examined that. I love the way you Hi,
once
Donald.
Again, I love it. I got a guest here in the studio.
Hi, Donald. How you doing today?
I don't want anybody to have any questions about where I stand on the issues. I absolutely, Christina, I believe it is critically important that we have liberty. And I don't want to banish all the Democrats. I am here to tell you that there are plenty of Republicans that I think are just not good people. What I want to see is I do want equal rights for everyone. I understand that we can't have equal outcome for everyone. And that is perhaps the most important thing. You cannot have equality of outcome. Everyone should be given an opportunity. Everyone should be given a chance. But then what they do with that, Christina, is entirely up to them.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating talk. I hope anyone who is not really conservative didn't choose to just shut down our conversation and really give it a listen, because really I think we have more common ground than everyone thinks, and that the news and different programs are leading you to believe. Just really go deep inside, research for yourself. Don't take what one person gives you, any news station, what we're saying here even. But let everyone know where they can hear you. You're on RagingElephantRadio.com. You're on American Voice Radio Network, YouTube, all the places, website, all that good jazz.
Well, I want to thank you for having me on your fabulous show. And thanks for not forgetting me. I was on with you, I don't know, a year ago or something like that. And I appreciate it. And can I just take a moment and congratulate you on your marriage?
Thank you.
You got a fine guy. He's a pilot. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I believe you're about to get your pilot's license as well.
Well, he's pushing it because he's getting his certified flight instruction certificate. So when he does that,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, that is very cool. Well, anyway, I'm an amateur pilot myself, and there's nothing like the liberty and the freedom you experience when you're up there in the air in your own airplane, charting your own course. And as my friend Johnny Johnson used to say, he would point out all the ground down there. He said, Doc, this is what they want, and they don't want you to have it. Mm. So the perspective you only get in the air. Christina, you're a wonderful person. Thank you for taking the time to call me. I appreciate it.
You betcha. And they can go to RagingElephantRadio.com, and they can go to AmericanVoiceRadioNetwork.com, is it? AmericanVoiceRadio.com, and my show's there live every day from 1 to 3 Central Standard Time. And, of course, the Doc Greene channel on YouTube for as long as they'll leave me up. Yes, absolutely. Well, I have to thank you again for sharing your great wisdom and blessing today. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy Business Radio.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina@SavvyBusinessRadio.com.